Hello everyone, welcome to my Call of Duty World War II Veteran Difficulty Walkthrough. This is Mission 8, Hill 493, and I'm gonna say this right now guys, I fucking hate this level. This is one of the worst levels in the game so far, and if the later missions are gonna be anything like this game might take a turn for the worst. And you might be thinking, what exactly is so bad about this mission? Well, it's the last part of the mission where you have to take out that tank. That sequence is so poorly designed. It is a great example of a Call of Duty doing what it does best in the worst possible way by far, but I'll talk about it when I get to that part of the mission. The rest of this mission is all very simple. This first part right here, you'll want to stay behind this rock, and there's at least 3 enemies in this side of the arena right here. There's an MG42 guy and 2 guys. I use a couple of my grenades here in order to take out the 2 guys that are sitting behind these trees here. And then once they've been cleared out, I'm going to push forward. I don't know if this spawn is an infinite spawn, but it just feels like a lot of enemies are present here, almost as if it is an infinite spawn, but I don't think it is. It's just there's a lot of enemies. And I always try to push forward so that I can get the drop on the enemies. And the main danger with being in this spot is that the enemies are going to rush you a lot. And some of them will prioritize your AI, some of them will prioritize you. You've got to be prepared for that situation. And be very careful right here. You see this rock that's right in front of me? Well, the enemies can sometimes shoot you through it. And at times they'll miss, but they'll still maintain that very omniscient AI of knowing exactly where you are, but just shooting into the rock at your general direction. And at other times you'll get shot for no reason. Really makes no sense why there are times when the bullets just seem to angle over the cover. But once you've seen that the enemies have been thinned out a bit, go ahead and push forward. Just be very careful here. I'm being very thorough in making sure that these enemies are dead, and then I'm going to sit behind here and I'm going to take out these 2 MG42 guys. There's 3 of them, but as you saw just then, before I actually pushed up here, I killed the first MG42 guy. And those guys are dead, and that right there was very close, so be very careful when you decide to go out of cover. And you'll want to take out the 2 enemies that are on this side of the arena, and then you'll want to push forward on that side, because right here is a really good power position to deal with the enemies, because the rest of the enemies are going to be preoccupied with your AI. One thing that I would highly suggest as you're making your way over to this spot is while you're sprinting, you should jump, because the jump will give you a lot of range, and it will allow you to get to this spot without getting screwed by the stamina penalty on your sprint. And as you'll see right here, the enemies, they're preoccupied with my allies right now, and they do not have enough time to turn around and shoot me because I'm killing them very quickly. But these enemies can also hide in cover as well, so be very thorough when checking. But when you see your allies push forward and you're not hearing any gunfire, this is your time to come over to the left side and do this heroic action. And this heroic action is very buggy. I had a couple of moments in some of my earlier playthroughs of this mission where I would be dragging this guy over to the prompt, and for some reason it just wouldn't trigger correctly, and I have it in a blooper section. But as long as you don't get anywhere near that guy, it will not cue the countdown for him dying. And because I was all the way over on the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side, the timer never went down. And because I cleared out the enemies, there weren't any enemies shooting me while I was dragging that guy. That was one of the main issues I was encountering with doing that heroic action. Now this sequence right here, this sequence is really well designed. And there's a trophy on this section here where you have to escort Parker successfully to this MG42 so you can blow it up. If Parker dies, you'll have to take up the explosive and take out this MG42. And don't assume for a moment that you have to aim directly at this MG42. You can actually aim right around it because the hitbox on this MG42 is a lot wider than you think. And as long as you are seeing sparks coming out from that MG42 section when you're firing at him, it means you are dealing the damage necessary to suppress this guy. And when he is suppressed, that is when you hold square on Parker for him to actually move forward. Now when you tell Parker to move from this spot right here, this is going to queue 4 enemies to spawn, and they'll spawn from right over there. I use my M1A1 carbine in order to deal with these enemies because the M1A1 carbine will at least afford me a little bit more control over where my shots are going. But there are times where the damage on the M1A1 carbine is a little inconsistent. I think there's a damage mitigation system when your bullets are traveling at a long range, and at times it just varies how many shots it will take to actually kill these enemies. But one of the enemies can set up all the way to the right, and he can be kind of problematic because you might put yourself in a position where this MG42 can hit you. You need to move on the left-hand side of the cover to actually hit this MG42 properly. If you use the right-hand side, this guy can easily hit you. But you'll see right there, like you can see the sparks coming out of that spot indicating I am hitting it, even though my bullets aren't exactly aiming for a spot that is directly where that MG42 is. It's kind of around it, and that at least allows this section to be really well designed, because you can put yourself in some positions where this guy can never hit you. That being said, though, I have had times where somehow this MG42 has swerved its bullets around the corner, or when I've been in a spot that used to work previously, I've somehow taken a couple of shots from this MG42. It's rather odd, but I think the situation where you'll get killed by this MG42 is very slim, so just commit to those spots and you'll be fine. Now, this part right here, take out that first guy because he's always there, and then take out the second guy. Then you'll want to wait until the grenade is just about to explode before throwing it. And the grenades on this game actually have a lot of range when you yourself are using them. Like, they have quite a lot of range with the splash damage. Like, watch this. You see that? That looked like it was nowhere near that guy, but the grenades actually have a lot more range than you think. And when it comes to grenades, Sledgehammer Games always delivers. They always know how to make their grenades feel very damaging, and they have a lot of range, and they're never useless in a lot of situations. I mean, this situation coming up right here, there's going to be a moment where you go inside of a room and there's 4 enemies inside of there, and there's one guy inside of that room who has more life for no reason. It's just a standard shotgun guy. He's supposed to have like the same amount of health as every other enemy, yet for some reason, this guy killed me so many times because of the way he's placed. Where he's set up in a position where he's programmed to attack you the moment you round a corner, and I had to pre-fire my shotgun in order to hit him, or I had to use grenades on him, and this guy can take 2 grenades somehow. And you'll see right here. So you take out these first couple of enemies using the flaming shotgun, and then you'll want to reload your shotgun and then swap to your MP40 if you picked it up, and then you want to kill this guy. This guy can't die until after his animation is finished. So I dropped his HP to 0, and then once his animation was finished, he died. And then this guy is a pain in the ass. He can somehow survive so many shots from the flaming shotgun when the enemies are supposed to die after like 1 or 2 shots, and then he can also take 2 grenades. And I had to use a smoke grenade just then, and that is the only time I ever had to use a smoke grenade in this mission. Can you believe it? The one time I use a smoke grenade, it's against one douchey enemy that has all these very special properties for no reason, because he's no different to the typical shotgunner. Why is that the case? Why do they give him this cheap artificial handicap to just be a douchebag? I don't get it. But anyway, this is the dreaded sequence right here. This sequence is horrible. This is Call of Duty design at its worst. And there's going to be a couple of enemies here, so you can dispatch them very easily. But the moment you plant your thermite on this gun, and then this tank appears, that is where the bullshit really begins. And speaking of beginnings, upon first starting this tank sequence, there is a random possibility that you can get damaged by this tank's machine gun. And this happened roughly like 40% of the time. But why the hell do they make it where this guy can damage you before you even get into cover, and it's just a second after the game gives you control? Like, you're not in any kind of cover at the moment. How do they let that slip by Q&A? Like, I have this saved in my blooper section if you want to check it out. But it's bullshit. That right there is classic Call of Duty design that I despise, because there are sequences like that in other Call of Duty games, and it's just bullshit. I don't see whether that's difficulty. People will say, oh, it makes the game more difficult. Well, there's not exactly any difficulty involved with moments where you can't control your character at all, and then you take damage. Like, it's bullshit. It's so poorly programmed. And right here, you'll need to lay down on the ground and take out these enemies, and be very careful that you're reloading at the right moments, or swap to your other weapon so that you are never caught with your pants down, and proceed very slowly. There's no telling how many enemies will choose to rush you, and there's always going to be enemies right here. And now for the most tedious part of this mission, and the most tedious part of this whole entire walkthrough so far. So, the way they've designed the sequence is you have to use thermite on this tank by getting behind this tank, and the problem is, the enemies can damage you during the animation of planting the thermite, so you can die during the animation, or there are moments where before you even get on the tank, the enemies can knock you off, and you have to put yourself in the right position where this tank is only going to go in one particular direction, so that the tank is shielding you from gunfire, and you have plenty of time to do this very lengthy cutscene of just putting the thermite down. It is the first time in this game where you can actually take damage during a cutscene. That right there is complete bullshit. You should not take damage during a moment where you cannot control your character. It's a cutscene. Like, look at the Black Ops 3. Black Ops 3, during the Diaz boss fight, you go to those cutscenes where you throw those grenades inside those cooling towers, and you can take damage during them, but why do they make it where you can take damage while you're trying to put the thermite on the tank? And if that isn't enough, when you finish the animation, you're out in the open and you have to retreat back into this cover, only the game spawns enemies out of nowhere in this spot, so you have to take them out quickly before they have a chance to fight back. And it's such a cheap design that is so artificial in its nature. All of that just serves to complement the rigid and tedious design of this section. It is so forceful in how I want you to do it, and your allies do nothing to deal with the enemies, even though they practically outnumber the enemies. And to add more to a rotten bunch of dumb designs, there is no telling how this tank chooses to move. It's random. It's random what it does, and considering that the game is forcing you to attack this tank in only one way thanks to some other bad designs, you can be waiting for what feels like an eternity, as is being shown right now. So I have to play the waiting game, and I have to hope that this tank goes all the way to the right, back towards enemy territory, and luckily on this recording, this guy happens to do so very quickly, because when he's coming from that direction, it means he's going to turn all the way back to enemy territory, and you have to hope that the tank is on this side. You cannot do it on the other side because there are enemies that are looking at you, and they can shoot you while you're doing this. Now that I've done that, the enemies are going to spawn in, so I have to deal with them very quickly. And then there's also a heroic action right here, and I'm still trying to get rid of these enemies right here, and they're dead. And then there's going to be a bunch of enemies that will spawn behind me and also in front of me, and they're shotgunners. There's like 3 to 4 shotgunners that can appear here, only they're so inconsistent in how long it takes for them to get over here because their AI is stupid. And there's no telling if they're going to come from behind me, there's no telling if they're going to come from in front of me. I mean, really, they shouldn't be coming in front of me at all because my allies are right there. Yet they're somehow able to sneak past my allies because my allies do nothing in this section. And another problem I have to deal with is there are enemies on the roof right above me. Like, there's one guy, or sometimes 2 guys, that you have to clear out with a grenade. And then, once you've gotten rid of these shotgunners and the guys on the rooftops, there are also enemies that you have to deal with that are on the battleground right now. They're out in the open. And then, once you've dealt with those 3 assortments of enemies, you can finally take the time to wait in that spot and just let the tank come all the way back to you and then plant the thermite. Just the level of incompetence displayed with this section, it outranks all the earlier parts of this game, and to add insult to injury, this is the mission where Turner dies, and it's supposed to be the point where you're supposed to feel something for Turner when he sacrifices himself, but with the amount of times I have failed this sequence thanks to all the really poor implementations of designs present, any emotional weight I had for Turner was completely replaced with frustration and anger towards the section, and that moment where Turner dies has no weight to it at all. It is such a disservice to Turner, and when a developer cannot be bothered to build a better section to precede a character's final moments, that's discrediting at its finest. And as I'm saying all this, look at what the tank is doing. The tank is just going around in a complete circle, not going anywhere. It's a stupid AI at its finest. It's borderline idiotic. This right here is just an example of an unfinished section that somehow got past Q&A, and it once again highlights exactly what happens when a Call of Duty game embraces such poor designs. This is the worst mission on the game by far, and I have no idea what the next missions are going to be like, but if they're anything like this game is going to hell in a handbasket. But we just have this last sequence right here where you're just using this pistol and you're dragging Turner, and the enemies don't die instantly from the pistol shot, but you can die during this moment, and that is the end of this shitty mission. And here are some bloopers, because if this mission's going to be as shit as it is, then it definitely deserves a blooper section. So this right here is a great example of how shit these smoke bombs are, and also you're seeing just how buggy this heroic action is. Like, watch. I'm trying to drag this guy over here, but the game is not letting me do anything. I try holding circle to release him, and then holding square again to pick him back up, and it's still not correcting this issue. Yeah, make sure you do that after you clear out those enemies. And then this right here, this is the guy that was proven to be an absolute pain. I mean, watch. I get around him by using the smoke, and then watch how many shotgun shells he takes. I fire 2 shots thinking that he's supposed to die after that many shots. I even somehow bypass him without getting clipped on him, and he kills me. He somehow survives that. And here's the same guy again, and once again, he's put himself in a very bad position, and my incendiary rounds just aren't hitting him, even though I have been able to hit him at that angle, but he's just shrugging him off like it's nothing, and then he moves behind the table, and I die. And then we have this sequence right here, but watch this. Look at this. I'm not in control right now. The game gives me control, and I'm already taking damage. Bullshit. That is bullshit. That right there is so poorly designed, and the same thing happens again. I take damage after a move where I don't have any control over my character. I barely have enough time to move into cover. That's like Black Ops 3 with its bullshit. Like, there's a mission in Black Ops 3 that was exactly the same, where you could die instantly on realistic difficulty before you even had a chance to get back into cover. And then that right there is a great example of the enemies knocking me off. And then we have this one right here, where I end up getting caught by this enemy who somehow bypasses my allies, and it further demonstrates the incompetence of the AI. I mean, where did he come from? Look at that. Like, this mission is just an insult to this game. This game has been so enjoyable, but now this mission has just completely ruined it. I thought this game was going to have so many great campaign missions that wouldn't favor such bad designs, but this mission has just proved me wrong. And like I said before, if the later missions are going to be anything like this shitty mission, I'm not going to enjoy the last half of this game. If this is the last half, I don't know how many missions there are in this game, but anyway, this is the end of this shitty mission. Stay tuned for the next couple of missions. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.